education system deserves an F. The system now is failing students, and it all has to do with exams. Like many students, I hate tests. I hate exams, I hate quizzes. Don't even get me started on pop quizzes. What all those have in common is that they punish students for mistakes, for bubbling the wrong answer, for not showing enough work on the math exam, for not understanding question 3, part B on the accounting 231 exam last week. He knows what I'm talking about. But what my point is that with how education is set up now, students are being taught to be scared of mistakes. Failure is the key to all success. Think of the famous quote by Thomas Edison. I mean, we've all probably heard it before. I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. All throughout history, failure has been the key to success. From science to new food recipes to successful businesses. Failure is key. I can't stress that enough. And through tests and exams, education is teaching kids that mistakes get punished. Do you think men like Barack Obama, Jeff Bezos, even Michael Jordan never made mistakes? They thrived off mistakes. Elon Musk, CEO of SpaceX, he shot 3 rockets and they were all failures to start. And when I say failure, I mean the first 3 rockets he shot exploded. He sunk millions of dollars, labor and time into each rocket. Musk welcomed failure and learned from it, and on his 4th attempt, it was successful. However, in education, acts like the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 encourage schools and teachers to deliver an education that is only focused on tests and how to make as little mistakes on these tests as possible. I don't blame teachers either for teaching this style. They were required by their superiors and pressure from the government to ensure students did well on these tests. So why would the teachers focus on anything else? Thankfully, acts like the No Child Left Behind Act have been put to an end, but similar programs are still in effect, like the Every Student Succeed Act, which enforces the same poor education on the students. I remember my very first semester in college. I had this unconventional and odd English professor. He refused the grade assignments. I mean refused. He believed that grades brought a negative attitude towards learning, that tests and grades would damage the precious relationship between a student and their education. In an article he was featured in, he said that professors should be designing better assessments, designing better tests, or even better, get away from these banking model style tests that are just about recall and have project-based assessments, project-based assessments, things that actually tested a student's higher order of thinking skills. In his English class, I found myself raising my hand and answering questions, even if I wasn't sure about the answer. I've never done that before. I was writing papers that expressed what I truly thought. I wasn't copying what the teacher wanted me to write or going off some strict rubric. I found myself passionate about the class, the assignments, the papers, all of it. In his class, he lifted the burden of worrying about mistakes. Don't get me wrong though, I made a lot of mistakes in this class, but I learned from them, and I wasn't scared to make them. When I got back during Christmas break, my parents asked me what I learned from that class. I told them the most important thing I learned was not to be afraid to make mistakes, that mistakes were crucial to education and learning. That's what I learned. So what does this mean? Parents should encourage their children to not be afraid to make mistakes at a young age. That sometimes tests and getting that delicious A on an important exam aren't actually that important. That rather learning from mistakes is where true education comes from. Schooling systems are focusing on the wrong type of learning. In John Warner's book, Why They Can't Write, Warner says that there is a way to help students develop scholarly ways of thinking without them being tethered to the strict outlines of academic requirements. Warner attacks the current teaching system, blames it for ruining education by making education into a chore, into something that students dread, despise, rather than something that students should love. The problem is that students are doing what teachers and the system have trained them to do. And that right there, according to Warner, is the big problem with education systems. If you were to take one thing from this entire talk, It is that for an educational institution or instructor to deliver the very best education for students, they must change punishments for mistakes to feedback for mistakes. In the book, The ABCs of How We Learn, by Daniel L. Schwartz, Jessica Tang, and Kristen Blair, they stress that negative feedback must be delivered in ways that encourage a student to take it constructively rather than destructively. And only through that way can we truly have an education where students have a positive relationship with education. Education needs to be reformed, where teachers don't punish students for their essays not meeting the instructor's level of correctness, or that there isn't enough work on the math homework. Teachers and professors should take mistakes as an opportunity to help students rather than punish them. Thank you.